All right, hey everybody, welcome to part three of the pre-draft ranks. This is Vikings. I'm joined tonight by regular Matt from the Chargers, and actually from one who's here actually a little bit less regularly than normal, but used to be well regular on this pod. Good old Clawless, aka Green Bay, aka your commissioner, has joined us and deemed us with his presence for the top 10. Jeremy, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Cool. Well, as Matt had said, this is the Red Shirt Club with Jeremy and I rocking ours, and not getting the memo. But we're gonna go through our final 12 teams here that we haven't covered yet, and get ourselves ready for the draft tomorrow. So we're in the final countdown of the top 32, and we're in the final countdown till we start putting landing spots to some of these players. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we have 12 teams left, and as we've been saying, let's start from the bottom on each of these. Nothing really happened today to move any of these rankings around. So
Nothing.
Slow day.
Really boring.
Slow day at the office, and we just had Brent join us as well from the Falcons. So just in time, Brent, right as we're getting going. We almost
I heard the sound of falling rocks coming from Green Bay.
Anyways, so we're going to start about the team we have ranked last right now, which again, probably based off nobody's surprise, based off the trade today, is me. So someone else talk about my team first because it doesn't feel right.
Who hurt you, Mike? Who hurt you?
I messaged him earlier saying I want what you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me this weird link, and it's just a whole rabbit hole of things. I really liked the team you had because it was stable. And
a
now,
young core, a bunch of locked in
you had a great wide receiver that was with probably the number one QB that any wide receiver ever wants to play for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Not biased at all.
Totally not multiple levels of biasm to that statement. Recom Tech. And then
Biasm.
now,
Was that a word you just coined there?
probably I'm good at those. And now you get Saquon, which is great, and you get effectively this year and next year of him being cost controlled.
Mm-hmm.
But you gave it up for Teddy Bridgewater, who is obviously a very polarizing quarterback. And you've basically thrust yourself into the position of you now have a sinking ship with a ton of holes that you have to plug with. You got a bunch of firsts to plug them with, but if you miss on half of these firsts, you're in a really, really tight spot, in my opinion. But if you hit on more than half of them, you're effectively in the same position you were in before, just without as much cap restriction going into the future.
Right. We're in a tight spot.
It gives you what you like, options. You like to have options. You like to be able to move around. And if you didn't think you were going to go for it this year, clearly you didn't. So I think this obviously makes sense for what you like to do, Mike. Gives you options. But yeah, definitely down at the bottom of this 12 list.
I made the joke a week or two ago that I feel like Mike won't be happy until he goes into a draft with no players on his roster and 25 firsts. That's the ticket right there. But I don't know.
And he will not.
Matt, you and I have
a single rookie on his team.
I was saying, didn't I make a joke
briefly in Discord, Matt? Because he doesn't have Barkley cost controlled for 2 years. He has Barkley cost controlled for 1 year.
This year, the season next year, end of season, he extends him.
Yeah, but he has to include that money in next season.
Just cut whoever he wants.
Cuts players. He doesn't have to build that into his cap at the beginning of the season.
It's like $23 million at the end of the year that he's going to have to come up with.
He just cuts all his 1 years and doesn't get any comp picks for the following year. But I think that's a worthwhile sacrifice for Barkley.
It's a lot of money to have to bake in on top of any other extensions, on top of any other players that are getting fifth-year options. It's just it is a good bit of money to have to bake in. And as the year goes, it's a lot to have to kind of keep in your back pocket.
I mean, it was
Or-
either he pays Barkley in 2 years or he's paying Cook now and for the next 2 years. That's kind of the thing, though. Like he was
just
paying a
bought-
running back either way.
He's just
Or he
buying
was letting
and
Cook.
trade him next year at the end of the year to the winning team for a first, because that's what Mike does.
I think I made a joke after last pod or the pod before it, Mike, about how you're going to somehow find a way to end up going into this draft with none of the players you came into it with and even more firsts. So I feel slightly Nostradamus on that one, but I didn't expect this. But it is interesting.
No Kyler, no Tyreek, no
Yeah.
Cook,
That trade you made
no
with
Godwin.
Titans is effectively. I think all of those players are gone now, aren't they, Mike?
Yeah, well, Earl Thomas is still here, but he could be had.
Is he
But
really
yeah.
here?
So
What did you
let
guys
me-
think of the trade itself, though? Aside from what it does to Mike's team.
I think that weighs heavily on if you think Teddy Bridgewater is good or not, and I do not think Teddy Bridgewater is a good quarterback.
I mean, Bridgewater could also have been. I mean, you didn't have the cap at the time, but I don't know, paying for Bridgewater when you could have just had him in free agency. It seems kind of blah to me.
I personally feel bad for all the memes that we're going to miss out on for Minshew that we could have
Yeah.
had this season.
Redskins, you got to step it up.
Yeah, he's
This one's on you, bud.
Mhm. Yeah, so just kind of a rewind there for Cook and for Tyreek, it was I think it's 112. What turned out to be 112, 116, and 120. Plus, I think it's 216 and 217 for Cook, Reek, and Earl Thomas. So I'm getting 2 first back, albeit later. So say that knocks out the 120 and the 2 seconds. So it's really, would you say Saquon is worth the 112 and 116? If we're going to go back and use that Titans trade as a comparison point, I'd rather have Saquon.
But I don't know. The deal today, I don't.
You paid less than what the players were worth when you originally, you got the players at a discount, and
Getting a great deal from Titans doesn't,
Doesn't-
necessarily
yeah.
bake into not necessarily like splitting the difference with this deal with Redskins.
ultimately, I don't think it's a bad trade. I think it just heavily relies on Teddy Bridgewater being above water on things.
come
And-
on.
I mean, but I'm
I
looking,
think that bridge is burned.
oh, God. When I look at the trade, I'm looking at it like Bridgewater isn't even part of the deal, because paying to acquire the guy that you could have had that Redskins just outbid on everybody. You could have had him. All you had
To
to do
me,
is bid.
that's just like saying that the whole 116, 120 for the players originally thing. Like, that's all just, it's hindsight 2020 things. Like, I don't even, was Bridgewater even signed at that point when we had
Yeah.
that? He was?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, like,
I mean, that's why he was
Mike didn't
34 million.
know he could have gotten him for
Yeah.
what he did. I mean, just because a player's paid well in this league, Brett, doesn't mean
I don't-
they're signed to a roster.
I don't. I want to ignore your hindsight and substitute it with my own.
Face of hell, 32.65 million.
So I don't know where I would bump Vikings down on my list, but for this season, I think we would have covered him last episode.
I cannot, in good faith, put you anywhere on this fucking rankings, Mike, because we don't know what your roster is going to be. Like, you have Barkley, you have N'Keal Harry, and you have Mark Andrews. We don't know if Bridgewater is going to be good. You didn't touch your defense yet. It's just all of your value is in picks right now, and it's going to, if you hit on your picks, you're still where you were before. If you miss on your picks, you're bottom 5, bottom 10, whatever. If you kind of hit, you're somewhere in that big cluster.
I mean, we're ignoring the fact that he's not actually going to be making those picks. Right.
I
You guys are all aware of that Mike
We
is
do-
not making those picks.
we do, but we also don't.
Okay.
He may or may
Players
not.
that
It's like
he will
that's
have on his team are not going to be rookies.
the value is not.
I mean, we'll have to see.
Yeah, we don't know what the value of what player 102 is or what that is.
We have 4 years
Transitions.
worth of drafts to look back
I
on.
do- I
Mike
sure
is going
do.
to be trading those picks.
I don't madness. That is exactly what we were dealing with here. Is madness.
No. So again, I wanted those picks because people have talked about, well, you're going to have to take this person at this spot or this person at this spot, but they haven't actually gone out and said, okay, let's list out, my top 30 right now. And I think the 2 picks I got today are going to be 2 very good defensive players. And I also have 6 more picks in the top 20 to be able to add offense. So the whole point of this, which I said last time, and I say again, is depth. I didn't think I had the depth to keep up with Goose. I had the studs to potentially keep up with Jeremy, but his studs were better. So I needed to do something. Otherwise, just, keep trying to get that second spot. So I get that I fell. I actually dropped myself in my ranks from 12 to 21 as a result.
Wow.
But we'll see how.
But you're not baking picks in, so.
But we'll see how. Again, we'll see what happens.
I had you 8th.
I thought you were going to win the division if you just made your picks with your rookies. If you went totally against everything you stand for and actually made the picks.
And with the 7th seed, I think you were locked into being in the playoffs, even if it was just as the 7th seed.
Yeah, but Mike doesn't play to make the playoffs. Mike's playing to make
fair.
money.
That's fair.
He's not my lazy ass.
But you gotta make the playoffs to have a chance.
If
Tell
Jeremy,
that to Giants.
again, that'd be great.
What's that?
If you don't knock me out in the last week again, that'd be great. Since I have mentioned
But
once or
I
twice
live for that.
Just knock him out in the
Yeah.
earlier
Boy.
weeks.
Anyways, that's enough about my team. But I do appreciate it, guys. All right, Jeremy, as our guest, why don't you go ahead and jump next as to the second worst team other than my, silly ass.
Okay, are we stating that the Lions are not in the top 12 then?
We talked about the
Right,
Lions.
we talked about them already.
Okay, that was just me that missed it then. Okay, I probably put Steelers as my next team in the list there.
Nice.
Running back, there's not a lot to love about here. He's got Julio, and Sammy at receiver. Tight ends are, Cameron Braid is done now. Basically, can't expect too much there. He has nothing at tackle. I don't know. I just feel like this is the team that's probably gonna fall out. Probably doesn't make the playoffs of these remaining teams that we're talking about.
Yeah, to me, they were easily the next team on my list. But it's less that their team's necessarily good and more the fact that outside of their division, they're in the AFC, which is just a generally weak conference, and we're gonna have to pull 7 playoff teams from somewhere. So like,
This team is going to make the playoffs. I think.
yeah, more than likely, there's going to be 3 teams out of the North there, even if they cannibalize themselves, just based off of how weak the South and the East are. So it's less a product of their team, which I just don't think is like. There's nothing that strikes me as like, wow, that's a really good strength of theirs on this team. They've got players that are going to score some points, and I haven't looked at their pick situation, so maybe they've got a couple of key picks that they can use to round things
defensive
out.
end looks pretty good.
Yeah, defensive end is okay, but
And a lot of teams can't say that, but
yeah.
all
They
it
got
takes
2
is-
starters, which is what my whole thing is. It separates the bad teams, good teams, great teams.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do, because they probably eat like 4 losses in their division, but still
I
fight
do
for the
think
playoffs.
I was kind of surprised when I was looking at this team.
They're going to
just
play Ravens and Bengals twice.
And Browns.
from what it
Well,
was.
yes, Browns are good.
By its previous owner. I'm kind of surprised at what it looks like now, because I remember thinking, oh man, this team's going to take a long time, and it's actually it doesn't look bad considering that.
It's not a bad team. Like, I don't think it's a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. It's just there's other teams that are better. Like they're in that good, but there's other teams in the division and the conference that are just better. But they're still going to probably fight for a playoff spot just because of how weak 90% of the rest of the conference is.
You got to feel for the team because he's been trying to break up Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Sammy Watkins and some of these guys for the last couple of years to rebuild. And the stigma around each of them, like no matter what, like those are two of the guys that you just can't get fair value on.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter what you're trying to get for Julio, no one's going to give you what he's worth for the last couple of years or even this year. So it's just one of those tough spots where you can't get the value that you need, but you need value.
It fell short.
So like Jeremy said, he's doing a great job getting pieces up off the periphery, but at some point, either he's going to move Ryan and Julio or they're going to be gone, and that's when the rebuild starts. But yeah, I think they're my second lowest team, very close to the lowest, but it's going to be either he moves his first to add that running back, or maybe somebody else joins new and offers a running back one for a third-round pick, and he gets the running back he needs, but probably not. All right. Any more thoughts on the Steelers?
No, I think they squeak into a playoff push, but
Yeah, I think they're 6 or 7 seed. I mean, 7 seed is already pretty generous, and in the AFC, like a 7 and 9 team is going to be in the playoffs.
it won't be that bad. But that's more just because one of the teams out of the East and South is going to end up just beating the shit out of the other ones.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Brent, you're up.
Somebody pay you to say Brent instead of Brent.
No, I wouldn't just.
I wasn't going to say anything. I just was enjoying it. That's why I laughed when you joined, is because you called you Brent. I didn't know if it was on purpose or not. It's beautiful, and I love it. Thank you.
No, it's
Mike.
forever.
I loved your trade. I think your team's going to be great. Lowest team left I have is Eagles.
Hey, we agree.
Oh, wow.
Keep sniping my damn picks.
So I had Eagles at 14. And it's not a bad team. The issue that he's going to run into is that he's good enough to never be able to get a quarterback, and he's got Brady. And I mean, Brady's going to play for this year, sure. I mean, maybe another year, and that's great, but it's going to make it really hard for him to get what he needs to rebuild. I mean, I like his depth at wide receiver. I like his depth at running back. He's just got no defense. That
I
is
think
worth
I
writing home about.
misjudged what we were doing here. I thought we were ranking the teams for this year. Is that not what we're doing?
We are.
I mean, yes, and yeah. I mean, so me griping about Brady, it's just he doesn't have. I don't know. So as I'm looking at
Two
his roster,
starting
that's what he
quarterbacks
has.
is a rare thing.
He doesn't have two.
He doesn't have two
starting
starting
quarterbacks. He's
quarterbacks.
got one. Unless you think Phillip Rivers is going to die or something. Pretty sure you
Yeah,
could
so-
shoot that man in the leg and he'd still start at quarterback for whatever team signs him, which happens to be the Indianapolis Colts.
Anyway, this team's issue is its IDP. I mean, he's got one starter, one player at defensive tackle. He's weak at defensive end. He's weak at linebacker. I mean, cornerback,
I
who
actually
cares?
really like his defensive ends. They're not studly, but Tack's underrated. He should score more than 84 points this year, especially if Atlanta does the intelligent thing and puts another edge rusher across from him. And then Murphy and Casey are both gonna be at least serviceable. But it's like the whole team's it's a tear down in my opinion. Like he's not necessarily that it needs to be torn down, just that is what Eagles is going through meticulously doing. He's trying to he came in with a team that was relatively bad and has flipped it and now is working harder to flip it into being good long term with
Did he just pay to get Jamal Williams?
Yeah, he did. But I don't think it was his first, I don't think.
But why?
Interest. I don't remember what the exact trade is off the top of my head.
I think that's the third time Jamal Williams has been traded for a first.
It is. He is the
And I'm
who is
getting,
that guy?
yeah.
Well, Brandon Cooks, first one that comes ahead with football, but Jamal
Nothing
Williams.
nothing at tight end.
Travion Williams into first.
Yeah,
for Jamal.
118 for Jamal.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
it's an
324.
expensive Jamal.
Well, you got 324 back, which should be a reasonable IDP piece.
It's an expensive
Ah.
Jamal.
Great.
I think the 118 probably returns better if you're looking long term. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. So I know that RJ has been focused on not rebuilding, but reloading in the purest term. The how do I take the pieces I have and make them younger and make them more sustainable? That's why he converted Saquon and Zeke to, more of 2021 picks and a younger receiving core.
Yep.
I agree the IDP has a lot to be desired, but we've seen here an ability to build IDP on the cheap, and I would not be shocked to see a good amount of churn and turnover on this team once the draft is done, and maybe some of the later guys that get stashed or picked up as we get into camp. So I agree. They were my lowest ranked team going left. I had them, I think, 18th. But so probably not a playoff team from the NFC, but still an interesting team that if he does get that stronger back seven and Brady surprises, could make a run, especially in the East.
He's especially one of the better owners in that portion of the NFC.
I mean, I could see him pushing for the 7th seed. It's just the NFC is so strong that the team is just not really going to measure up against some of the teams in the North and the South. So,
Yep.
How long do you want to be stuck in the middle? And what can you do to get out?
And he's now just got this really weird Redskins team growing up in his backyard thanks to a certain Minnesota man.
I have no idea what you're talking about. All right. So, Matt, you go ahead. You got the next one.
My next one, since my last two have been sniped. Oh, out of that remaining group, the Indianapolis Colts,
Yeah, I agree.
which I think we've talked about when,
A little bit.
yeah. I mean, it's just, there's
The
not.
high rank for not having a quarterback.
Yeah, they have Mitchell Trubisky. They're depending on Mitchell Trubisky to play more than 3 games, and that isn't happening. There's just so many things that could go wrong with this team. Like, he's another person that is depending on Teddy Bridgewater not to suck butts, because DJ Moore is his singular wide receiver. Miles Boykin, I guess, is the other one that you're really looking at out of that group. Maybe Greg Ward somehow sticks around in Philadelphia, but there's just the offense could score okay or it could score terribly.
I mean, it largely depends on whether Geis and Johnson,
That's
play.
I like Chris because he's a believer. Like he'll buy guys that he just believes in. Like DJ, he's like, nope, he's gonna stick with.
So the other thing about Colts is he's definitely a studs focused owner. So if you've been a fantasy contributor, and don't mean just like top 50 guy, like top 24 guy in your position, then Chris is all over that. So that's why he's got guys like guys like DJ. He's probably never moving DJ Moore just because of everything he's got there.
Right.
He's like hot on the trail of Kelsey all offseason, that kind of stuff. I think his offense is good enough, again, depending on how long Mitch starts. The defense is an interesting thing because with D Ford, I think he's probably a little undervalued. He could have 3 DNs starting on a regular basis. And if he does that, if they all start for him, that's probably 60 points right there. So it's an easy conversation to get to the new mid 250s on this team. And he doesn't have a stronger linebacking core or a back four that you'd want. So I picked these guys to win this division because I think it's a sneaky good team. I don't think it has the horses to compete with the Bengals, with the Chargers, with the Browns, like the top of the division. But I think this is definitely a team that wins their division.
I think they win their division just because their division's shit. But that's the pot killing the kettle black at the moment, I think. But it's just like my issue with this team is like, yeah, he's got 3 on paper in the NFL really good defensive ends, but none of them stay healthy. None of them see a lot of snaps. Like, these aren't guys that are going to be
What do you
going
mean?
out there and, huh?
What do you mean people can't stay out? Who's got to stay healthy?
I mean, when you look at his team, like, what are the odds that Geis, David Johnson, his 3 defensive ends, and Mitch Trubisky all managed to play more than 12 games?
If you're a believer,
Honestly, this team could end up just looking like the guys that back up the dudes on the NFL All ACL team, like midway through the season. No
Less the
quarterback.
ACL.
Maybe Tywan Jones or Jordan Wilkins. No, Frank Gore. Frank Gore will end up being his best running back this season. He'll sign somewhere, run for his 675 yards, and get a couple of touchdowns and be his leading rusher. But it's just like there's either the guys he has hits, or this is a very bad team, and all the guys he has, sans DJ Moore, are either injury prone or have their position at risk of being taken from them.
it's kind of funny because this team is like guaranteed to mess up everyone's rankings at the end of the year, because either he's going to do really well and throw off your rankings, or
His
he's gonna do
his
absolutely
ceiling is
terrible.
maybe winning the division to lose to the Bengals or Chargers in the playoffs, or being a top 7, top 8 pick.
Wow, you have
But he
one
doesn't
of
control
us
his
not
pick.
getting the bye. Yeah, this
He doesn't
is
control his pick. Who has that pick? Mike?
I think so. Philly had it last I checked. I thought.
Well, good for RJ. Maybe. I mean,
I think, although I think it may have moved in the Jamal Williams trade again. Who knows? I don't know. I can't recall.
I will check right now because I have that page open.
No, there was no future.
But yeah, this is one of those times that unfortunately the recording platform we have here makes me name the episode before we start recording. Otherwise, all you have to do is believe might just be the name of this episode. So regrets.
Eagles does have Colts first. He has his first, Colts first, and no other picks next year.
Alrighty then. All right, moving on to the next team, Jeremy.
Oh, next team I have was me.
You do.
So
Yeah.
I guess that's fitting.
Want to talk about yourself first, or want us to do it?
I think you guys should probably take the reins on this one. But yeah, I agree with you.
Nose goes.
Let's see. So,
I'll do it. Okay.
yeah.
I don't care. I mean, Rodgers going to put up points. You've got 2 great running backs that are going to start for you almost every week. Wide receiver is thin after Sutton, so the struggle to get your wide receiver 2 is going to be a bit painful. I mean, the defense is especially deep at linebacker. I mean, defensive tackle doesn't look great, and I'm kind of worried about how Ioannidis is going to do if the Redskins do end up taking Chase Young. But I mean, generally, I felt like this was certainly on, with the studs that you have on offense, certainly deep enough to push for a wild card spot.
I think this is a pretty even keel team. Obviously, like, stud running backs are always great. Wide receiver is a little scary. I mean, Cooper is going to be really good for you because I think he ends up still holding the same type of position he has in the NFL, returning punts, returning kicks, being a special teams guy, getting some snaps at wide receiver. Defensive end, I like because you have a lot of guys that have been not huge, but are serviceable, which is a lot better than the guys that don't really try to even fill in defensive end. Linebacker's great, except you should just totally dump that bum Ty Summers. Send him literally anywhere in the AFC West to a Los Angeles Chargers team. Cornerback doesn't matter. Safety that actually looks pretty good for very, very cheaply had guys. Although Marcel Harris, I don't think is... Well, 450K, can't beat that, but I don't think he ends up doing anything. But no, I mean, it's a pretty good, it's solid. It's not hingent on outside of wide receiver, it's not hinging on one or two guys, and running back. But running back, your running backs are either good and they play, or they die and they're useless, and it doesn't matter what you do. So yeah, I mean, I like
Is
your team,
hingent-
Jeremy.
Is hingent a word?
No, I made that one up too. We're just
Okay.
making up words tonight.
So I think this is one of more balanced teams. I think we've hit the point in the rankings where the remaining teams have at least some balance on both sides of the ball. Obviously, it's a little bit more weighted towards the offense than the defense, but there's strength on both sides of the ball here. Rodgers is going to throw for yards. Chubb and Fournette are obvious stalwarts. Sutton there, if he breaks out, could be his 1, with Cobb potentially getting the volume to be his 2. Tight end, I mean, I've been in enough leagues with Jeremy that I've seen that, tight end's the last thing you add. So whether it's his first or his second next year, it'll be on the move for a tight end if he needs it. Defense, he's just got contributors throughout. Deion Jones had a rough year last year, but came on real strong at the end. Suggs doesn't have a home yet, but come on, Suggs, he will. And then the Jalen Ramsey, franchise player of Green Bay. But again, it's
Don't like those 10 million quarterbacks.
But again, this is a classic Jeremy team because it's got contributors throughout. So, not quite as dedicated to a certain archetype as Goose is, but same idea of I'm not going to overpay unless I can get him at a reasonable cost for my stud. I'm going to get a bunch of $5 million guys who can put up in the mid to high hundreds rather than drop 15 million on a guy who gets me 220. So
It's a very blue collar team.
yeah.
Yeah, I
They
had
all
this
bring
team-
their lunch pails to work.
I had this team all the way up at 6.
Well, thank you.
Except Ty
Well.
Summers. That dude's trash. Cut him.
I had him at 13, so yeah, right on the edge there.
Wow, you had me outside the 12?
Ooh.
That hurts.
Me.
I think you guys
Jeremy,
You talked about your team. You talked about your team.
Yeah, receiver obviously is my receiver and tackle. I think are my biggest problems. There's not much to say there. Receiver, I'm just hoping that Farrow keeps up what he was doing already. Gets the same role. He's not in Arizona anymore, so that's kind of a worry because last time he wasn't in Arizona, he wasn't doing anything. So kind of just banking on him still getting those return duties. Defensive end, I'm hoping Tuitt is okay because he got hurt last year and that kind of killed my run. But I think you guys hit it on. I like my team a lot. If I'm looking at it from the outside perspective, it's like it doesn't wow you, so that's why it kind of falls down. I think there's nothing you're like, oh man, that team's awesome. It's just nobody would be upset with having this team, and I'm not upset with having this team.
Very Wisconsin.
Blue collar. Lunch pail to work.
No one's played the draft game yet, or otherwise we'd all be dead.
That team comes in every weekend, all day Saturday, and puts in extra work and doesn't talk to the boss about overtime.
All right. So before I mute Matt here for using all the colloquialisms for the draft, let's move on to the next one. Brett, why don't you take the next one?
Next up, I have the Texans, who were my 11th ranked team.
What?
Didn't we talk about them last time?
You did. They're not on my list at all.
We talked about them in the first 12, I think.
Really,
No.
I missed that.
Well,
Yeah.
we did 10 and 10, but
I think this was when who did Chris bring up that we were all
Okay.
like, what the hell? And
Oh, okay. 49ers.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree on that. But I mean, I want to kind of hear your spiel on the Texans now. But
I think the division is weak, and I think Josh, he doesn't have a running back, but I feel like he's going to get enough points at wide receiver. I feel like his linebacking core is pretty deep. His defensive ends I like. If he can come up with running back points from somewhere, and his division being weak as it is, I feel like he is certainly a wild card team with some of the depth that he has, and I think he could push Colts to win the division.
okay, proceed.
So 49ers. You
This is
what
our
you say,
first team with two
starting
QBs.
quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Is this what you say, 2 starting quarterbacks?
Well, I mean, probably 2 starting quarterbacks. I mean, Ronald Jones took a hit. I like Mac. I mean, he'll cobble together some points at wide receiver. I think Hilton will bounce back as long as he's healthy, and he's a great guy to have in best ball. I think he's got a lot of depth across the IDP. I think he should win that division.
I like having the 2 starting quarterbacks to start off. That's definitely helpful. I really like his running backs, that trio of Jones, Mack, McKinnon. Not McKinnon as like I think he's going to be great, but McKinnon as in like in best ball he's going to be really good, because that's just how Niners running backs are going to be this year. I think still it's not going to be a guy that you just pound into the pavement every week. Wide receiver, he's got a lot of interesting names at minimum. None of them are great.
Don't write off Martavis Bryant yet.
Exactly. There's still a chance.
That is the
Look at all
true
those S's.
champion.
That's
thing.
the fun thing.
So many S's. I know we joked about it in the DL chat today about Scott Miller being the new Julian Edelman, and people are just overhyping Godwin and Evans and Gronk. And by we, I mean I talked about that. Getting Gronk, he actually has Gronk on his roster. Speaking of devil,
ridiculous.
he's got a really good tight end group,
I love him.
especially. Yeah, like those are. You should give the man a call, Jeremy.
Yeah, seriously.
But I don't.
Let's go.
I don't
I mean,
agree about the IDP depth.
Yeah, his linebackers are. I would be terrified if that's
His
my situation.
linebackers are incredibly thin, and his defensive end is deceptively thin. Unless you think Michael Bennett at 700 years of age is still going to be producing well enough, but
See, I did it at a glance to move on, and now that I go back and look at my notes, I said no defensive tackle, no DE2, linebackers thin.
see, this is why you got to do it on the fly, Brett. You do it on the fly.
I did, and I fucked it up.
Well, more of a fly, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say 2 starting quarterbacks because until Foles takes the job, it's still Trubisky's. So I'm sure Foles will get some starts, but it's the all-risk running back core. Like literally, he could have 3, he could have 2, he could have none in 2 days. So I overused this a couple years ago when talking about Eric's team, the Bills. This is my incomplete team because this team could be winning the West. This team could be a top 5 pick. Like, so say Tampa, Indy, and San Francisco all take guys in the first 2 days. So that probably means McKinnon's gone because he's got the most cuttable contract, completely sheddable. Means Mack and Jones would get pipped. So we would have the 2 starting quarterbacks, but then no starting running backs, 1 startable receiver, 2 startable receivers, the world's greatest tight end group, and then a thin with a couple studs IDP, which isn't going to get you much.
Well, the post-draft should be very interesting then.
Yeah. Or comes out of the draft, Tampa says, well, we don't care what you say. Ronald Jones is our guy. Indy says, we're just going to keep building the way we're building, and Mac's going to be our workhorse again this year. And 49ers win 12 games. So they're my incomplete. I used it for Eric last year, but again, the sheer range that this team can fall, just I can't get there. Although, Jordan Reed being there is a nice addition too.
The tight ends is so fun. It's just like this is a fun group of tight ends. Anything could happen.
You could go back in time, like 2 years, and tell somebody that's like knowledgeable of Noah Fant's existent that a team would have Gronk, Jordan Reed, and Noah Fant as their tight ends, and that dude would probably freak out about how great that is. And now it's like Noah Fant is obviously Noah Fant, but Gronk is coming out of retirement. Jordan Reed is somewhere in an assisted living home. And Chris Herndon is one of 72 tight ends playing for the New York Jets. Sorry, Santi.
I mean,
and it's a weird group.
I just checked because I hadn't followed it lately. Jordan Reed had one visit to the Seahawks in the beginning of March.
I'd be fine with him signing there. He can meet our friend Dre Greenlaw.
That would not end well for him. Anyways, my turn, and I'm going to throw one out there that I think is going to get some reactions. But the next lowest team I have is ranked 9th, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh, you're speaking my language, Mike.
So was in a tough situation where he was going to be stuck with holding the bag with Trubisky, but at least gets a reliable starter in Matt Stafford with potential upside. But as long as Patricia's there, that upside is limited. Christian McCaffrey speaks for himself. Very best ball focused set of receivers in Thielen, Samuel, and Fuller. Tight end is once again hoping that Ian Thomas finally does anything this year. And then it's depth at IDP. So I think this is one of those teams that we looked at them last year and said, oh, it's your offense carrying you, not your defense. This year, I think it's defense, because I think McCaffrey hits roll 370, and none of those receivers scream reliability. So if that's the case, then it's got work to do.
I'm going to keep my comments to a minimum to avoid any sort of jinxing between me and Bengals come the AFC Championship game, if that were to happen. Yeah, I agree that it has definitely flipped more to this is an IDP team and less of a Christian McCaffrey and friends team. Sans the early Christmas present that Colts gifted to the city of Cincinnati. Yeah.
Brett, Jeremy, thoughts?
Yeah, I had him 6th, and I think you summed it up pretty well.
Well, shit, I had him 3rd, so what do I know?
How to get on Chris's good side.
Well, I guess.
So I think I had him, lowest then. So fun time.
I had him at 32nd, but that was out of pure spite, not at actual rating of anything. But
so whereas I'm trying to make sure Goose is as high as possible to jinx him, you are trying to go the other direction and make sure that the ranking is as low as possible. Good stuff.
Yeah. I do not believe in the reverse jinx of that sort. I believe in it doesn't fucking matter what I say or do. It's going to end up being some shenanigans again.
All right. So, Matt, I believe you're up to mention your second team.
Yes. I think my next team on this list here is probably the Giants.
I agree with
kind of the same deal as the Bengals, where it's his offensive talent's much more spread out, but it's again very reliant on Lamar Jackson and now Ezekiel Elliott, thankfully for him. That it's going to be those two and maybe Odell Beckham Jr. if he can come back into form, plus a bunch of dudes on defense just trying to buoy that. But a lot of those dudes aren't at positions that you really need them. Like, he's got a bunch of high-scoring cornerbacks, but he doesn't have that same depth at defensive end. Like, he's really, really shallow at defensive end, which is why I have him generally so low with the combination of the poor offensive talent outside of the studs and then the crappy defensive ends.
So this is, again, I think first off, we reached the top 5, and for good reason. I think probably, most of these teams are at least 4 of the 5 in our top 5. But look, Lamar is Lamar, and I don't think he has a season like he did this year. Same kind of thought as McCaffrey, but he's still going to be a fantasy darling. Zeke is a nice add. This offense just screams to me of unfulfilled promise, but the defense looks potentially deep enough to buoy it. The end, I really like Josh Allen, but I don't think he has a reliable second there. The secondary is ridiculous. Nobody over $1 million, and all contributors at that point. linebacker again. Can the Smith twins in Green Bay do it again? Could be there. Probably maybe add one more if I'm them. But again, this just screams of IDP heavier, despite some of the big names on offense.
Yep. Just agreed. Falcons, Green Bay, anything?
I think my concern with this team, other than the fact that he's never going to have, I mean, he's going to cobble together wide receiver 2 points each week, and hoping for an Odell bounce back, and I'm not really that happy with James Conner at that point, at this point, but I don't know. I feel like he's going to have weeks like he did in the Super Bowl, where his outside linebackers pop, and they pop together and they put up 30 points, and he's going to have great weeks. But if the Smith brothers have an off week together, he's got to get crushed at linebacker, and he's going to have, a week where he can get beat by anybody. So he's got a really high week-to-week ceiling, but a really low floor as well.
Yeah, I think his linebackers, there's a lot of, eggs in one basket kind of situation there.
Right. Like if he were to add a solid middle linebacker that's going to reliably get, even just 12 points a game just to cushion him when one of those guys doesn't pop, I think he'd be in better shape. But he doesn't have a lot of offensive depth, even if he has a couple studs. And I think his defense is going to be pretty hit or miss week to week.
I think that's fair. All right. Jeremy, let's get your top 4 team.
My number 4 is the Browns.
Agree?
Yep, sounds about right.
And again, we're at the point where it's not like you can really shit on any of these teams. They're all good. But I think what holds this one back for me from the top is the running back. And it's not like these are bad running back core to have, but it's none of those big names that you kind of want to have for a championship run. But I mean, the depth at linebacker is amazing. I love that. All in all, I think it's just a really well-balanced team. It's just a running back that's kind of holding it back for me.
So this will be a fun one because, like you said, they need potentially that running back, but they've taken, and he's going to love the fact that I mentioned him 17 times in a podcast because he rents a room rent-free, but it's a goose running back core. It's none of these guys are starters except for maybe James White, but they're all capable of putting up anywhere from 10 to 20.
I don't see Derrick Henry anywhere on here.
I don't think Browns had the extra first laying around to just go get a free Derrick Henry.
So he has 221 firsts, not great ones, but he's got Matt's 21 first and his 21 first. So what's going to be a fun thing to watch is Browns doing the scoreboard watching, the standings watching this year. And we get to week 5 or week 6, and we see that team who's 2-8, who has a strong running back but is clearly out of it, and all of a sudden sees a couple offers pop in around the 2 firsts that he's got for 21, plus a contract that fits what he needs to take that RB1, and then this team is just trouble. So I think he's got depth at the right places. He could probably even use one more D end just from a depth perspective, but I think this is definitely a contender.
His wide receivers are going to be really good if Stills and Williams can stay healthy and consistent, just because Reynolds is supposed to get that increased role, which I think does help the running back situation, because I think I showed last year it's pretty reasonable to just run one. So if he's just got one of those guys coming in every week and giving him solid points, that's going to be well enough for him to just have his wide receivers come in and fill in the gaps, especially with Goddard and Higbee coming in.
Exactly.
And apparently Eric Ebron too. So
Ebron will have weeks where he scores a touchdown, and that is viable, like 3 of them.
Yeah, that'll take care of that.
I'm curious, where did you guys have? I know that Matt brought up Panthers during our pod last time as a team that when he was spitballing, and we talked about them. But Vikings and Green Bay, where did you have Panthers ranked?
I didn't rank that far.
So in Green Bay's defense. He just asked who the top 12 that we hadn't talked about were. So
Yeah.
I had them 7th.
Yeah, I have him 6th.
So
And we talked about them.
Let me go look real quick.
right, I think that what we said about Carolina was very similar to what we said about.
I guess I was just feeling weird about having talked about them fairly early on last time, and then be going through our top team rankings and not mention them as one of the teams that I had, at least in my top 10.
I think this team just falls into that same idea of a bunch of studs, kind of like New York, where they're going to have weeks where they pop and they're going to have weeks where they don't. Some of his studs are more consistent. Bobby Wagner, probably Joe Mixon. Cooper Kupp's a fairly level-headed or level-scoring player, but there's going to be a lot of times where he's only got 3 defensive ends. It gets kind of scary, even though they're better defensive ends. There's still only 3 of them, and he's only got 31 guys on his roster.
Yeah.
And if a couple of those guys here or there don't pop, he's probably in some trouble.
But I think he's probably a playoff team.
Oh yeah,
I'm hoping he's a wild card team, and I think assuming this team stays healthy, I think he has the players to beat anybody any given week.
We talk about the AFC being really bad, but I don't think it's realistically that much worse than the NFC. Because the both of the Norths, there's 2 or 3 teams that are really strong. The West in both are pretty much. It's a lot closer in the NFC West between 2 teams, but there's 2 pretty bad teams in the NFC West. Just like there are in the AFC West. Not to shit on Chiefs and Broncos, but Broncos got bad hand. Chiefs kind of in a weird rebuild. To where I don't think it's unreasonable to the Panthers are a pretty solid playoff team, and it's less by any massive stroke of their own team strength and more of there's really not a whole lot of, I don't even know how to put it. It's pretty stratified in both of the conferences where the good teams are and where the bad teams are, in my opinion. It's just more so stratified in the AFC.
Yeah. So before we jump into, I'd say the true contenders, the cream of the crop, our top 3.
The podcast is brought to you by.
I feel like we should probably bring back up because we talked about it last time, and of course, my trade kind of shifted things a little bit, and they probably warrant some discussion in the tier we just kind of finished. Is Washington. So, especially when we're talking about the Giants and everything that they are. With the Redskins making their additions, who do you have winning the NFC East? Do you have it being the Redskins, or do you think the Giants can hold them off?
I still think it's the Giants, but I just don't think Redskins' team is very good. It's he added Tyreek Hill and Dalvin Cook, but he also just he doesn't have anything out of Dalvin, Tyreek, Diggs on offense. Hunter Henry, but that's assuming Henry meshes with whatever quarterback is throwing the ball in Los Angeles this year. Defensive tackle, he's got some interesting play there between Quentin Jefferson and Anya Mata. Defensive end, we have no idea where Yannick is going to be. He could end up in an absolute terrible situation where he's not necessarily splitting time, but lined up across from another good edge rusher, which is going to eat into his stats. So he may not be another 180-point scorer. He may take a hit there. Shaq Lawson, same thing in Miami now. Linebackers are just not good.
I'm seeing a Leighton Vander Esch there.
Yeah, that. Is there still a concern about his neck? Is he done?
I think he's fully cleared.
Okay. Because I remember there was an issue where there was a concern his neck thing could cause him to not be able to play football long term. So I don't know if that was still creeping in. But his team's not bad. It got better, but
Might be more consistent than Giants, though.
It could be, but that it doesn't matter what your consistency is come playoff if the Giants pop and Redskins are consistently 230-point scores. Like it is great to have consistency because it really helps you make the playoffs and get that higher seed. And if you get the higher seed, it's one less game that you're having to play. I guess now it's just the one seed gets that, so maybe it's even less it's less meaningful. But this isn't a team that's going to have consistency and he's going to mark his tally for this one. But it's like it doesn't have the same consistency as a Goose team. There's not 7 dudes at each position that are roughly scoring 9 points a week every week for the rest of time.
God help him when Cook gets hurt again.
Yeah, there are not many teams that are shallower at running back than me, but that is one of them.
I mean, he does still have 130. Maybe make an offer to pick up Madison for that pick.
Would Cleveland give Madison for that pick?
I don't think you do. Like, there's just the value of that pick does not equate to that of a possible starting running back.
All right.
I don't know. He just offered me that pick for David Montgomery. I was really considering him.
Enough digging around here. So we're to our top 3. So it's a question of we've got 2 NFC teams and an AFC team. Which is going to be the Super Bowl? Is it going to be the NFC Championship or is it the AFC Championship? Well, shit, this is tough because we've got Brett and we've got Matt as 2 of these teams. So
That's my Super Bowl.
That's your Super Bowl?
Mhm.
You have me beating Goose. You're my favorite.
Goose is going to find you and
Oh my
commission
God,
you so hard, Jeremy.
So I have Goose's 3rd also. So
Oh, God. The wrath.
Goose, I have you at number 1 because I couldn't rank myself that highly. That just seems I lack modesty.
Whoops.
All right, so we have 2 3s, a 1. Matt, where were you? We'll wait for you to.
I think Goose is 2 behind myself, but that's because I am arrogant enough to do that.
All right, so that's a little over 2. Okay, I think that means that they're probably combined to rank the latest of all of us. So we'll continue with Chicago before we talk about your guys' teams. So the big thing holding Goose back in my rankings, and I know I'll get some shit for this because his 20 point per game when he took over as starter was Tannehill. I'm expecting some regression there. I don't think he's that kind of player. That said, I don't think he completely falls off to what he was in Miami. The depth there at other positions is pretty evident. I think Ertz becomes the slide, but not enough to really hurt him. Then it's just a matter of defense, and the only potential Achilles heel I have for Goose right now is at corner. And again, this is not something to worry about at this point in the season. So
Achilles heel.
yeah, Achilles heel that's going to get a nice little bronze reinforcement on it. I'm joking. I know bronze is weak. Come on. Anyways, I don't like Tannehill as much as the other 2 quarterback options here, and once he continues to supplement corner, I think it's like I said, a 3-horse race here.
Wow, you don't
What
like
do you think?
Tannehill as much as Patrick Mahomes? What's wrong with you, Mike?
What do
Barely.
you think about his wide receivers?
So,
It's an interesting group.
it's a nice best ball group because I think Woods gained some stability based off of everything that's happened there this offseason. He still has high upside guys in Tyrell Williams and Sharp Harriman. And Beasley, I don't see Diggs being added there impacting Beasley. If anything, the emergence of Knox might take some targets away from him, but I still see him as kind of the 70, 80 target guy there. And that provides the floor that Goose needs in this to be able to kind of, if I get 8 to 10 points from Beasley, then 1 to 2 boom weeks from Perriman, and Woods giving me 12 to 14 a week, then I'm good at receiver.
Yeah, I guess it kind of seems like a team that's meant to get just enough points at wide receiver, other than Derrick Henry, to let all of his defensive depth pop week to week and crush you on the defensive side of the ball.
That's how Goose plays. Is his offense is supposed to score the same amount of points with different names every single week the entire season, and then hope the defense just continues to punch people in the mouth. But I think the biggest weakness on this team is actually linebacker, because he really doesn't have that many. Like, if you look at it, it's like there's a lot of names there, and there's a couple of guys that scored well, but two of the guys that scored well are free agents, and one of them is an old as hell Clay Matthews. Which, at this point, you have to assume he's signing somewhere, maybe at the end of this offseason, as a player got hurt, filling on what he thinks is a championship roster. This isn't a guy that's going to get signed somewhere specifically to fill a role anymore, I don't think. Outside of like a veteran presence and like, hey, we need another guy that can come in on third downs and get at the QB. Like, this isn't 2014, 2013 Clay Matthews.
Right. I do wish I had known Cam Jordan could be had instead of getting Dante Fowler instead. But,
yeah, he has gotten some very nice bumps at defensive end. Those have been surprisingly annoying.
I thought Derrick Henry was pretty big for his team.
I mean, the Derrick Henry trade was weird because in a vacuum it makes sense, but at the same time it doesn't. Just because you're not going to get back the same value of players. And Juice has told me this multiple times. You don't trade IDP for offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's effectively what was done in return for Derrick Henry. Is Goose traded two of the middle tier IDP guys for Derrick Henry.
Goose tells you don't trade IDP for offense?
No, I'm sorry, you don't trade offense for IDP. My confusion.
Right.
But that's the other guy traded offense for IDP.
Yeah. The other guy yes. Exactly. So that's
or a really shitty offense.
Right, because you're not
offense or really shitty offense.
You cannot replace those running back points with late first pick.
I've been trying for years to replace or get consistent running back points, people. This isn't something that just happens overnight, except when it does.
All right. So we're down to our final two. And we're both on the podcast. This is awkward, isn't it?
Hi. I mean, I'm the top of the AFC. I win no matter what here.
You're the final two, so
yeah. No, but I mean, I've
the AFC, he's atop the NFC. So
I ranked myself third behind the Bears, then Chargers.
So Atlanta has the curse from me this year. I have them first.
Ooh.
I
am 110% getting third.
I gotta hear about what Matt and Jeremy think about this, because Mike has me first because he does love the players that he traded to me.
That's true.
And Matt fucking hates Godwin.
I do. That's not gonna be a 280 point score this year. He's not even gonna fucking sniff it.
And whenever we talk about this, I always say I would love that if he got 80% of that. I would be thrilled.
He's not going to get 80% of that, though.
I mean, your receivers is definitely what's holding your team back from the one spot for me. You don't think?
I mean, let's see where Josh Gordon lands, and then we can make that decision.
All right, so we'll talk about Atlanta here then. Again, his trade with me definitely boosted this team up the ranks. Getting Kyler a quarterback, two of his three stud running backs last year in Jacobs and Monty, and then Annie Kamara for the 104. Receivers, again, Godwin was, I think, top 5 last year, Ridley and Debo. Hawk and Waller at tight end, so good depth and good production there. And the defense isn't really a slouch. Again, maybe the secondary could use some reinforcing, but not big issues right now, especially with what he still has there. So, like I said, they're my top team by a couple of points, not a huge margin, but because the offense just looks like it's going to be that good, that young, and that deep.
Yeah, my concerns here are really just, the obvious ones at wide receiver. Running back's fine. He'll be good there. Tight end's good. It comes down to defensive end. Frank Clark, I think he played well, but I'd be concerned about him just because I think Chris Jones is going to end up on the move. And then it's like the same deal that's happening in San Francisco as you take out DeForest Buckner, and now one of those other guys is going to get doubled this year. You take out Chris Jones in Kansas City, Frank Clark's going to start seeing more focus from offensive lines. And he's not going to get that same penetration. You have no idea where Jadeveon Clowney's going to end up. And even then, he's not the big sack guy. He's not the big, huge game type player. He's really, at this point, I honestly think he's more of like a run-stopping defensive end that thinks he's some massive 12-sack guy.
That's assuming he stays at defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, he
Although
could
I'm
end up at
correct,
defensive tackle, but
Clowney?
yeah.
I think he probably. I mean, it
could.
I think it's more likely that it ends up at outside linebacker than
Yeah.
defensive tackle.
I think it ends up depending on where he ends up, which is kind of like the messiness of defensive end right now. Because if he ends up at a team that is like, hey, we want to bring you in, but we want you to be lining up inside of a linebacker because you're better at stopping the run than you are getting in the QB. Now you got Jadeveon Clowney at defensive tackle, and it's troublesome.
That wouldn't be great.
And then it's just
that's kind of why I made the deal for Fowler was to protect myself a little bit with defensive end depth. Should Clowney not end up at defensive end?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a very good defensive end group for sure. It's just like if I'm nitpicking a team, like if I'm nitpicking the team on defense, that's where I'm concerned because I don't think those numbers translate into the new year. Well, linebackers more.
I think I want to change my rankings because Brett's going to end up with 3 starting quarterbacks by the end of this year.
What? How?
Yeah.
Who's he trading Smith for?
No, Smith will play.
So Rosen, probably get a spot start here or there again, pending, and then I don't know.
That's my late night random take. I think all 3 of these guys are going to start at some point through the year.
That's an awesome take. I love it.
Somebody clip that for DL League.
Very nice hot take. I love it. All right. Do we have to talk about Matt's team, or can we just call this early?
Pretty sure with how little I've changed over the years, we could just cut and paste what we've said the past 2 years and then just replace last year Randall Cobb with a soundbite of you saying Emmanuel Sanders instead.
I'm just really looking forward to you somehow losing in the wild card round and then looking at your point totals and knowing that you'd have won the Super Bowl had you still been in.
That's not my curse, Brett. My curse is Mike puts me second. I end up third because I barely lose in the AFC Championship game, and then I obliterate whatever team I play in the third place game. That is the curse. That is going to be what happens until Pat Mahomes and I die.
At least Mahomes held out.
Now we just need Kittle. Well, that's never going to happen.
Nope.
I hate that.
I slipped up one time. It's not happening again.
George, why would you sign that contract, dude? Why would you do it? It doesn't make any sense.
Because he loves the beaches here in Los Angeles, and it gives him ease of access to the WWE studios so that he can work on his pro wrestling career during the off season.
I mean, if we're going to pick nits, linebacker is thin.
Yeah.
You're right. It's thin.
Oh, yeah. It's very
defensive
thin.
end. I mean, defensive end. I think that week to week, as you've got enough depth that week to week, you'll have somebody that hits. But there's nobody to really. There's an expensive Everson Griffin. There's an expensive Emmanuel Agba. I mean, I think you'll cobble together nice production. But
I do have 5 starters, I think is the thing. I don't want to get too defensive of my team, but it's, as of right now, Street, I believe, has been talked about being one of the starters filling in for Buckner, so he may end up getting moved to defensive tackle anyways.
I mean, if you end up with 5 guys scoring points, like I said, I mean, you'll cobble together 2 per week that are scoring pretty good points. But there's there's nobody in particular that to really write home about individually. Together, they're more than the sum of their parts.
I'm waiting for Mike to tell me my cornerbacks suck.
No, I'm gonna stick it on offense. What do we start? One quarterback, and then a running back, two receivers, a tight end, and two flexes. I don't see your flexes. Your flexes right now are going to be on a regular basis between Jordan Howard, Emmanuel Sanders, and Mohamed Sanu. And that's why I had Atlanta ahead of you, is because I think Howard has shown consistency and can be one of those flexes on a regular basis, but I don't trust anybody in a starting position in Miami right now.
Without doubt.
So that being said, that's your best flex. Sanu was a well-documented faceplant last year. Richie James is going to give you occasional big special team weeks. Marcus Robinson got re-signed in Kansas City, but again, they would need to do nothing at the receiver position, with Watkins potentially taking a year off for him to be reliable. Then Trent Taylor, again, Niners fan, love him, but anything but maybe 2 spot starts throughout the year is asking too much. So I come back to when we get to a point where you need everybody to score for you to win, who are my 2 flexes here?
Sanders for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sanders. I mean,
Like, I think I'm of the mind that Sanders is going to be better than any wide receiver 2 that they've tried to line up across from Mike Thomas, and Drew Brees is going to just run with that. But that may be selling him a little bit too high. And then,
I mean,
if
I
anything,
think
go ahead.
match
Go
his
ahead,
point
Brett.
total from I mean, I think he could match his point total from last year, or come within 80-90% of it if he can stay healthy.
So I forget which podcast I heard this on, but somebody made a very interesting, but obviously non-scientifically supported point, is the 32-year-old breakout, where you have a ridiculous season on your 32-year-old season, and then your 33rd-year-old season falls off. It was Jordy Nelson a couple years back. It was Sanders last year. I forget who the in-between here was, but where for whatever season you have your last hurrah at 32, and then it's gone. So
Crabtree, one of those years.
I could buy that for Sanders if he wasn't coming off of an Achilles injury last year.
So
yeah, he did play very well considering the Achilles injury. I mean, it'll be health and volume dependent.
Yeah,
And-
I mean, I have a very shallow team on offense, which has been my
I will
My
point out in
thing
my
for
team's
years.
defense, I do have a fairly early second and 2/3 to play with. So
you do.
we'll put that out there.
all right, well that gets us through all 32, and 24 hours from now we will know where the first 32 of the NFL draft picks go, and at least have some sense of what our draft may look like. So consider we have our commission on the pod. The start of our rookie draft is Sunday.
It is. Let me look.
Next Friday, isn't it?
Friday, I believe, is where we start. Nope, Saturday.
We have to wait a full week. Oh,
Saturday at 10 a.m.
You guys, some shout outs to the group name where we have some people listening. We have Browns. Yeah, the Bengals rating. The Niners, those S's stand for superstar.
Martavis Bryant. Yep.
Colt says, man, Matt really just hates me, huh?
Something like that. I don't hate you, Chris. I'm just disappointed in you.
Ooh, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
See, if it was coming from me or Jeremy, that would mean something, but you just can't pull that off yet.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that we have our non-biased commissioner here ranking teams. Just
Well, I'm glad to have him on. It's good to get back on the mic with him. But again, we are what's over our hour long goal this time by about 15 minutes. But you have the extra two teams to rank this time, and near the top, so we spent a little more time on a couple of these teams. But to wrap up, Jeremy, thanks again for joining. Any closing thoughts?
Just be ready to draft, guys. If you're cutting players that have more than a year left, just remember you're supposed to post that in the message board so I know to log it. But yeah, no, that's it. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Happy to. Brett/Brent, depending on how I remember to pronounce it.
yeah. May all of your players survive the draft this weekend. Good luck, everybody.
Here's
If
hoping.
all of them survive, that's just
Yeah.
no fun.
It's a scary time, especially to own a running back. It's a scary time.
Matt, anything to close with?
It's always fun. Look forward to tomorrow.
Yep. So I look forward to, hopefully some survive, some don't survive, because otherwise the post-draft rankings are really going to be boring.
Nice haircut, Mike.
Thank you. I did shave my head yesterday. My curly, crazy hair had gotten too long to the point where I couldn't actually see very well my periphery, so it was time for it to go. So I borrowed my father-in-law's clippers, and not very high and tight, but going in that direction. Anyways, thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.